Go. All right, welcome back to the Baseball Blue Book podcast. My name is Eric Webenaw, the president of the Baseball Blue Book, and looking forward to today's episode. Really a spotlight on the Neiman family, coaching family. We've got Coach Tim Neiman, the dad. We've got Doc Neiman up at Penn West, and we've got Nolan Neiman down in Manatee in Bradenton, Florida. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, Eric. Always a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Eric.
Well, hey guys, everybody knows we've already had Doc and Tim on, and so they kind of know the process of this. But before we begin, I'd like to encourage everybody to subscribe to the channel. Gets the word out. The comments have been great, kind of giving me some ideas of what we can talk to the coaches about, and then also share it. Make sure everybody can see this, and really our goal here is to give you guys more information about the coaches that you are interested in playing for, and kind of a backstories and what makes them what drives them, what makes them love baseball, and I think most importantly is raising young men and what they're doing and the responsibilities that they have. So, Coach Tim Neiman, I'm good at the father. Let's start with you. Let's talk about kind of you coaching when the kids were younger and what that was all about and what it was like.
Sure. Well, first thing first, though, if we're going to subscribe, make sure you subscribe to Baseball Blue Book. Eric does an awesome job, and I'm not just saying this. I'll return the check he sent me, but that's not true either. But it's an unbelievable resource, and for those listening, subscribe and tell your buddies. It's not just good for high school, and it's good for parents, kids, and travel ball all the way through. So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't say it. Nolan was around a lot when I was coaching American Legion baseball from 1983 to 1988. And I can remember him in his little bat boy uniform and sitting in the dugout. And there's a great picture of him standing with all the players' national anthem. I think he might have been 4, something like that. I mean, it's an awesome picture. I might have to take a picture and post it. It's amazing. So he had the bug, right there for sure. So he was with me the whole time, and a quick thing with Doc, I can remember Doc, be in our house in Percy, Pennsylvania, and all of a sudden hear a tape recorder, and he's out there, but he rolls his wagon out, and again, maybe 4 years old, 5, well, maybe not even, he rolls a wagon out with baseball stuff, bases, bat, home plate, and a tape recorder, and I hear this music. It's a Star Spangled Banner. Doc pressed play, standing there with his hat on his chest, and the national anthem's played, and he goes play ball. And there's probably, he plays about 3 minutes and starts another game. So I remember that. And Nolan in the backyard, both of them really. I always used to make sure that they fielded 100 balls before I let them hit. Because all the kids want to do is hit. So they both became really, really good fielders. Nolan was an exceptional infielder, and Doc, of course, caught. And Nolan caught for me one year. Happened to be the player of the year in the conference that year. And he's behind the plate. I said, what about throwing guys out? I said, just turning double plays. Just turn a double play. So he threw a lot of guys out. I was pressed into business. But, having your kids around the game, having their kids around here at DeSales has been an amazing experience. And I think it's in our genes. It's in our blood. My father was involved for a long time, and that was already existed, but I just think it fueled the fire, for them to be around it. And you hit the nail on the head. It's about growing up. They saw how, championship teams act and how they, present themselves and how they represent themselves. And I think both of these guys, Nolan and Doc, emulate that now as head coaches in their own programs. Nolan's had a bunch of college experience besides Millersville, and Doc is forging his way. And, I'm very proud of him because I think all those life lessons have kind of rolled into their being today. And I think that's the biggest part of it. But coached them both. I was a very, quite an opportunity to do that. Nolan started at Flagler in St. Augustine and then transferred back. And Doc really didn't look anywhere else. He wanted to play for his dad, I guess. And both are tremendous players. I think both easily could have played somewhere else. And having them for 4 years was excellent and hard at times, but for the most part, really, really good. And they had great experiences, got a degree. Doc's got a master's degree, and they're both doing really, really well.
That's great. You know what? I'm sitting here thinking about my own family. My dad has 3 boys, and all 3 of us had him as a professor in college. And so I kind of I'm sure there's some similarities, right? There's good parts of it, and now this is back to Doc and Nolan. There's good parts of it, and then there's also bad parts, right? It's in the classroom with Dad. There's good, and then when you walk out, I remember a situation. I know this isn't about me, but there was a time when there's this other student that was commenting that I was the teacher's pet. Well, they had no idea that I was actually the son of my dad, right? So that I was always talking to my dad afterwards, and they're like, "My God, he gets all the favors," and it's just so there are some issues or challenges. Nolan, I mean, being the oldest, were there any of those situations, kind of being dad is the coach with other players? Were there ever situations maybe that maybe you had to work harder or you pushed yourself a little bit differently because of some of those maybe expectations or what other people might have thought?
Yeah, I think at times, fortunately, I was a fairly decent player, so that helped. I never felt like I was given anything because of who I was or anything like that. I think more in that, that middle school, early high school stages is kind of when that might have been more of an issue. But, when you get to college and get to play for them there, it's a little different. Everybody's a good player. Everybody has their awards. Everybody has their backing to them. So, at that point, it's your best guys are there to play and win. So, for me, it wasn't as bad as probably I know, my friends that have dads that are coaches and stuff like that have it, but certainly at times I'm sure it was there, and maybe more than I even realized.
Yep. Doc, you're the youngest, right? So you kind of watched your older brother kind of go through this. Talk about kind of, I mean, you obviously loved baseball right away. Was there ever any time in your life that and maybe you did go off? No, you were actually the one that stayed and played for your dad the whole time. Talk about the dynamics of having your brother kind of going through and finding his way, having a dad there, just some personal, emotions and feelings that you had as you were growing up.
Yeah, so the first 2 years, actually, Nolan was on staff too. So I had both of them kind of coaching me, which was awesome, and probably will never ever happen again. And just to have both of them there was awesome and see that through. Like Dad said, I kind of always knew DeSales was the right spot for me. Nolan took me on one college visit down to VMI, and I had been up to St. John's a couple times with Dad for some showcases and those are really the only 2 things that are on my plate. But really, DeSales was always in our heart and knew where we could go and play and like Dad said, get good education. So seeing Nolan go through it and knowing that he played on 4 really, really, really good teams, one team that went to the World Series. I knew that that's something that I wanted to kind of follow and do as well. And we had some successful teams the 4 years I was there, not as Nolan's, but it just kind of made sense for me to go there and play and play right away. And that's something that we always talk about is getting the opportunity to play right away. And so it was a good fit for me.
That's great. That's great. Coach Tim, when did you know that these guys were coach quality guys? I mean, I talked to a couple coaches yesterday, and it always seemed like there was a moment in their playing career that you just knew that coaching was going to be something for that player. Is that something that you kind of went through? Did you know right away, or was it just kind of a process, or was it surprising that they wanted to follow your footsteps?
Yeah, certainly not surprising. That's for sure. I think they both looked at what I did and what the profession was, and all the years at 34 years at DeSales, I haven't worked a day in my life, and
right.
And these 2 have much more ability and much farther along down the road than I was at that age. But they both were always students of the game, always asking questions beyond, what was going on. I think they understood the game. They watched the game. Yeah, I don't know if I can pick out a moment or two. I think discussions after games with, now I've never really tried to get too involved, but there were times. I mean, expectation. I was probably honestly harder on Nolan than I was on Doc, and that was just my immaturity. It had nothing to do with either one. And I think they really both have passion and love it so much that, hey, I want to do what Dad does, and it's not an easy path for sure. I think once
Right.
you get in it, I think you can stick with it and stay with it. But life happens and takes you different places, and it's no question in my mind Nolan could be a big time coach somewhere right now, but he's married and with 3 kids and very happy doing what he's doing in Manatee. So specific time, I guess probably not. But I could always talk, the nuances of the game with them probably as early as Little League, and they're both successful youth players, and I kept my distance, but I don't know if there's anything specific that I could point to. But I'm not surprised, that's for sure, and certainly proud that both of them are doing what we're doing. They can make a lot more money doing other things, that's for sure. But hey, money's not everything, and we all have smiles on our faces, and the best thing I can say, they care. I mean, care about my players. No one cares about his players and program, and Doc as well. And that's the end of the day. That's what you're left with. You've got relationships with the players, and I have 34 years of them. With players and families and stuff like that. And I think both of them realized the value of that when they were growing up around it, and then experience it as players and now coaches.
It's great. Doc, what was kind of obviously there's a lot of things that you've taken away from your dad and kind of molded into your own program. What are some of the things as you were growing up, not more specifically when you were younger, that you can look back at and go, these are the few things that I really took from my dad, and I've implemented in my life and brought to the program?
I think some things are just a lot of the expectations that he instilled us at a young age, and just playing the game the right way, running on and off the field, being on time, being a good person both on and off the field. I think those things are stuff that we've instilled in our program out here at Clarion, and that we continue to, build the character kids up here. But those things I think are probably some of the ones that really hit home when you're younger and growing up throughout the game and being around both of them, and just being around the field. Again, we were both bat boys and around teams for as long as we can remember. So it was an expectation back then, and it's still an expectation now for his program. And I know Nolan does the same thing at Manatee, and it's what we expect our guys to do. If they don't do it, that's where, we get frustrated as coaches and we want change in it. So, I think those are some of the things that really stick out in my mind, is just how we were around the game and how we were presented with it and the expectations at a young age, and that's something that we've continued to carry over. And I'm sure Nolan feels the same way about that and instills that in his kids.
Yeah, and Nolan, I think it's interesting to have the dynamic here with the college coaches and then the high school. I'm sure that the college coaches that get players from your program are probably pretty happy about it, because you're instilling some of these things that you've learned and watched all of your life. Talk about kind of how at the high school level you're able to kind of almost jumpstart these kids to have more success because of what you've seen, what you've experienced. Obviously, you've coached college, so you know the expectations. I think that's huge as a high school coach. Talk a little bit about that and how you build that into your program.
No, absolutely. I think it's a huge advantage, and I've been very fortunate to coach at all 3 levels of college baseball, Division III, Division II, Division I. So being able to have those conversations with our guys and really kind of be blunt about, hey, if I was at this place, I would recruit you. If I was at this place, I would recruit you, or vice versa, gives them a different vision than most would, I would think. And being able to have those conversations again and be their advocate is huge on the recruiting side. But then from our program side, we don't have rules, we don't have anything like that. We have standards and expectations. And at the end of the day, it's I'm judge, jury, and executioner, just like with Doc and Dad. And if you're going to embarrass the team or embarrass your family or ourselves, then you're not going to be around. And I think having those kind of values with our players is huge. They come every day, they work hard, they know what the end goal is. And look, 7% of high school kids play college baseball. So it's not just getting them ready for college, but when they leave here, they're expected to be ready to walk into any college and play, and at least have an opportunity to play. And if they don't go the college route, that's okay too. And last year we had 5 or 6 guys that had offers, and I think only 2 ended up leaving and going and playing college baseball. The other 4 chose to go to school and be students or be a fisherman. One guy's captain's license, but he came back the other day actually and was talking about all the lessons that we taught him and how it relates to his new business being a captain. So those things and those rewards come in different shapes and sizes, obviously, and seeing your kids play and be successful, or seeing them, be successful and make money, and again, be a captain here in town and have fishing charge, all that kind of fun stuff. So, I think, again, the expectations and standards, if you set them early enough, and your program is going to grow around them, and then hold them accountable on top of that. We talk a lot about building an accountable program, and if you don't do it with not just me, but with your assistant coaches or your senior leaders or anybody for that matter inside the program, if you're not holding each other accountable, you're in trouble. And whether that's here or business or wherever, and the more they can be successful leaving here, the better they're going to be.
That's awesome, Tim. I'm thinking back at our last interview and the things that you've always talked about of developing these young men, and baseball just being a tool. You could actually take baseball out of all 3 of your areas and kind of substitute it with whatever you want to. And I don't think you'd change kind of what you guys do in a day-to-day kind of the process. You talk about accountability, you talk about standards rather than rules. I really like that, Nolan. It's I have no rules. I have expectations and standards, and certainly that comes from Dad, right? And just watching this. Tim, what are some of the things that you're most proud of with not just your sons, but the programs, the families, the things that they've become? And I think we already know the answer, but I just give you the opportunity to kind of share what makes you the most proud of being a dad.
Obviously these 2 guys right here, that's number one, first and foremost, and they're special, and they get it, and it is, they know the value of relationships. And we just had our legacy dinner. We do it once a year. Scott Fransky, the Phillies radio broadcaster, was our guest speaker, and we had 180 people there. And it's the relationships. We recognize the 2000 World Series team, and still those players and parents and the current teams and other alumni were there. They're just so grateful and appreciative, I think. And really, I don't need the thanks, and these guys don't need it either, because your job is done by what they're doing. I read off all the occupations, if you will, of the people that were the players who were in attendance 2003, and it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling what all these guys are doing. And I think that's what it's most proud of. I mean, won a lot of games. If you're around as long as I am, you're going to accumulate some kind of a number, and you don't remember those. I don't remember, over 800 wins. I don't remember a lot of them specifically. A couple of key ones, I don't, but I remember the players. I remember the players. I might remember most of their parents. That's what I remember. And I think Nolan and Doc both, get that. They value the relationships. I spoke on an ABCA convention, virtual, 2001. Had to do it out of a studio, and I got gypped out of the audience. But I spoke on legacy. What it takes. What is it? It's doing things for others and not expecting anything in return. It's all kinds of things wrapped into that, and that's really what a man's legacy is. I think when it's all said and done, my tombstone, it says, "Hey, guy was a great guy, cared about others." Okay,
Yeah.
you know, that was a win. That's a big win. You know, nowhere is going to be there is X amount of championships and World Series appearance and pro players. No, who cares? You know, I mean, it's
Right.
nice and you got to promote it. Those are marketing things, you know, for you. But, you know, when you're sitting across the desk from you know, and a recruit and their parents, you know, it's, you know, you can't fool them. You know, they try to fool you sometimes, but you can't fool them with how you act. And if you're, you know, you have some integrity and your honesty, I think those things always come across. And you made a good point about Nolan. Nolan with his college experience, those kids have no idea how valuable that is. I mean, he can
Right.
stick to it and know exactly, you know, where a kid belongs. I saw them play in December, I guess, was it? Or yeah,
Yeah.
they're really good. I mean, they amplify all the things, you know, that we've talked about. And you know, so high school, some kids are better than others. You get the hand you're dealt sometimes, but I mean, it's building a program, just like Doc at Clarion. They're building a program because after all, the evaluation is done and it's over with. At the end of the day, it's what kind of a person are you? What kind of a person are
Yep.
you? That guy's going to succeed. You know, you're going to strike out and fire your bat in the dugout. You're going to blame the ump, transfer blame. You know, what are you going to do? You're going to throw your glove coming off the mound. You're going to, you know, show up the coach when you get taken out. Nobody wants that. I mean, you don't so want it. Been to games, and I think I might have shared this before. Joe Consoli, Pittsburgh Pirates, got outside more major leaguers than anybody. So I spent some time with him as an associate scout. And I was with him one day. We went to watch a really, really good player. And he got there before they got out of the car. He wanted to see what they look like, you know. And this kid saunters in, hat on backwards and sandals. And we left. He goes, just, you know, he's not a guy for me. He didn't want to watch the game, you know. And he's a tremendous scout and a talent evaluator. But he always said, after all the evaluation is done, find out what kind of a person he is. And man, those are the kids, you know, they're competitive. They're the ones that you can hang your hat on as you go forward. You know, so I'm proud of all those principles and character traits that are now, you know, living in these two guys. And they're going to continue to tweak and, you know, they're not me. They're different. They're much better than I am preparing for practice and all those things. My coaches get me to the games. That's their job. You know, but these guys are really, really good. And they're much farther ahead of the game. And they'll tweak their programs and fit their personalities. But, man, that inner core, man, that's, you know, you go sleep well at night. Lay your head in the pillows like, you know, I stand for something. And I think overall that's that's where the pride comes in. No question about it.
That's great. And you speak of legacy. And I think Nolan probably has a better understanding of this than Doc. Nothing against Doc. It's when you have kids, the legacy things, you start thinking about it a little bit more. The older you get, you start thinking about it a little bit more of what's most important with your kids. You just want them to be happy. And I think happy and carry some of those values that allow the legacy to continue. And I think that's what I'm hearing here, which really exciting. And again, Nolan, I feel like I want to talk to you a little bit more because I haven't had the chance. And it's really, I love talking to a high school coach because the whole industry of baseball, I hate to say industry, but it's become an industry, right? The high school coach has become less and less valuable. And it's now the travel teams, it's the elite clubs, it's all of these other things. The thing about high school, and I hate to speak for you guys, but the part about it is, you know, these kids a lot more personally, right? You're in the classrooms with them, you're in the hall rooms with them, you see them throughout the day. Talk a bit about kind of the lost art of being a great high school coach.
Yeah, you know, I think I'm very fortunate here. We're in an unbelievable area and county for baseball, talent-wise. We have 7 public schools and another 4 private schools in a small county of Manatee County here. We are the flagship high school, so to speak, the original one back from 1897, and you know had a storied history of baseball success here. It's kind of gone away the last 10, 15 years or so. And we're trying to get back to that, you know, and a lot of that is just because, like my dad said, in high school, you're dealt with the hand you're dealt, you know, where we have new developments growing up. We have the fastest growing development or town in Florida is in our county. So everybody that moves into town moves there. Everybody on the west side of Bradenton, where we're at for our school, they're moving there too because they want the new houses that are cheaper. So you're definitely you have to play with the hand you're dealt for sure. And I think that's where a lot of high school coaches get frustrated, especially if they're not able to kind of run their development program and infiltrate the community and be a big part of what's going on here. That's something I think we've done really well here since we got into the Little League system a little bit, just helping them out, doing coaches clinics and youth clinics, just so they kind of know. We're also fortunate our field is in a county park with the 3 Little League fields surrounding us. So when we have home games, it's a million little kids running around in their uniforms and their parents, and it's exciting. I mean, it's an intense environment, almost hostile at times to play there. Other teams don't like coming in to play there because it is very loud and energized and almost like a high level college or minor league games. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of bells and whistles. But I think if you can get into that community and sink your claws into the trenches of, okay, hey, getting these kids to grow up at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, wanting to be Manatee Hurricane baseball players, then we're going to be successful. And again, you know what? You might not ever win a state championship here, but if you run your program the right way and those kids grow up bleeding Navy and red and they want to be Hurricanes no matter what, then you're going to have a good program. Other areas are more talented for sure, but at the same time, our kids have been very loyal and very bought into our system since we got here. I mean, we run a summer program here for 2 months. We run a 4-month fall program or winter program, whatever you want to call it. And every one of our kids is there unless they're playing a different sport. And again, it goes back to the expectation of, you can't force them to do it, but they all want to, and they all see the rewards of them getting better. And I think that's where the high school coach is more instrumental in their development than the actual high school season. It is different down here. We can be with our kids pretty much all year. I know in Pennsylvania you can't, except for those couple months. A lot of states you can't coach your kids in the summer and travel either. We can here. So there's certainly a lot of advantages in Florida that other states don't. But again, that allows us to build and develop a program, facilitate what these kids need on a daily basis rather than show up for 3 months in March, April, and May and be done with it. So
that's great.
But the high school coaches, it still plays an instrumental role for sure. And if you do it the right way, those kids stay and they don't want to go to straight travel ball. They don't want to transfer schools to another program. And they want to be a part of it. If you can get them growing up again and bleeding those colors and being all in, it's pretty exciting to see what happens.
Yeah, that's great. My brother's a soccer coach up here, and it's all about development, right? He gets them, has camps and clinics for the 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and he gets them to cheer for the Wildcats at a very young age, and it makes it a whole lot more fun and community driven. And baseball used to be like that. It's exciting to hear. Florida is probably helping because of some of the structures and the things that you had. Just another reason that Florida is a great state, right?
Exactly.
So, now, hey, to wrap this up, guys, just a couple last comments. This, podcasts are always going out to parents and players. Obviously, some other coaches are watching, and I love having all those guys on. But just one last statement, Doc, and we've talked about this on the previous podcast with you, but really the primary thing, the thing that you focus on from a coach, what the players that you're looking for, what is the most important thing for you as a college coach?
Yeah, I think again, just repeating kind of what we said earlier on this is find out what kind of person they are. I love the high school kid. I love bringing them in, especially we're trying to build this program and, turn the tables out here. So getting the good high school kid in that, again, we don't have to worry about off the field, comes in with good academics and can help us compete in a very competitive conference. Those are the kind of kids that we're looking for that we don't have to worry about off the field. And then again, it fits all those characteristics we just talked about earlier. So that's one of the big things that we look for here, and, just being coachable. I mentioned in our previous one that as much as we recruit kids also need to recruit us. Sometimes we're recruiting a kid super hard and, we don't get the same in return. And then it's like, are we wasting our time? Do we still get them? Do we not? And I think the kid that stays in touch with you and gives you updates, whether you get them or not, those are the kind of kids that if you do end up getting, you're like, that's the right kid for me. And I think that's huge from my standpoint when I'm recruiting kids out here. So
that's great. And Doc, one last question is, where do you find the kids? Do you have no problem them reaching out to you directly? Do you go to camps? Do you guys have a camp? Talk about where you're finding your players.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time this summer on the road. I love recruiting, so I like getting out and spending at showcases and different, team camps. I think that's one of the best way to see kids from my standpoint. I'm not blessed with a huge staff here, so I look for weekends where I can see the most kids at one time that are going to be competitive for what we're looking for. We have kids from Maine all the way down to Florida on our roster, with Ohio, New York, New Jersey, all in between. So for me, I'm just looking for the best baseball player, the kid that can come in and compete and wants to play right away and have an opportunity to do so. But I think, a good way for kids to get involved is go to prospect camps, reach out, understand that coaches are busy and we may not get back to you in the first 5-10 minutes of an email or a text. But me personally, I always try to get back to a kid, again, whether it's an email, a text message, a message on Twitter. That's been a huge recruiting tool lately. But getting out to a prospect camp, getting to see the university, Dad runs a bunch and it gets those kids on campus. We run one at the end of summer, and it allows kids to get on campus and see how the staff works. We bring our players in. That's the best way for these kids to kind of figure out what's going on, because our players are probably going to tell these campers how it really is. And it allows us to get more personal with those kids. So that's the best way for us. But again, we're looking wherever we can find guys. Word of mouth is great too. Good. I know Nolan's helped us out with a couple guys over the years, and it's just sometimes it's just word of mouth is also the best.
That's great. And Nolan, last question for you. Being that we talked a bit about high school and different things, what would be a message that you would have to some high school players that may not be in a great high school system? What can they do to better themselves? Not necessarily from a baseball perspective, but to become a better person in maybe a situation that they aren't real thrilled with.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think continue to learn and be a sponge in everything you can do. And, from a baseball standpoint, if you're not in that program that you feel is at that caliber, get out in the summer, play for one of the good travel teams and be around people that can be a good advocate for you and kind of rub off on you a little bit. And then on the recruiting side as well, I think Doc hit it in the head. We push our guys to go to as many college camps as they can. The big tournaments are great. We actually run Knights Nation Florida out of here as well. Louisiana Knights Florida operations we're very successful, have a lot of teams. But the big tournaments are great, but they're not always people there. And if you don't get seen, or if the number one recruit at the tournament's thrown on a different field and you're not on that field, you're still not getting seen. So continue to be in front of them as much as you can. And Doc hit on the head. You got to recruit them as much as you want them to recruit you. And the guys that do that and stay relevant in those coaches' minds are ones that get opportunities. We have a couple kids here. One just committed to East Georgia, and he went to a lot of different schools and a lot of different camps and finally found a good fit for him. Our center fielder is another one who's still in the process of doing some things. And from a coach perspective, players understand that there's always tests getting thrown at you too. When you say, hey, can you come this weekend and work out? If you say no, they're probably going to go on to the next guy, or at least give you a little bit of a leash, but not much, to try to get there next week maybe. And I think those are good learning lessons for kids, is if you really want it, and Doc and Dad will tell you, they want kids that want to be there. And if they're going to give the effort and they're going to show the energy to drop what they're doing and go to that camp or go on that visit, it's probably a pretty good opportunity that they're going to get offered to come there and have a spot. The kids that drag their feet and don't want to go visit and don't want to go do things, they lose out on opportunities. because it's not just one kid for one spot. There's 10, 20, 30 kids for one spot. And how are you gonna differentiate? How are you gonna sift through that mess to, cross them off the list? I always told everybody, it's, as a scout, as a coach, as a recruiting coordinator, it wasn't finding kids. Anybody can go find good players. It's your job to cross them off the list. So don't give them a reason. Don't give anybody a reason to cross you off the list. And I think players, if you can understand that and play that way and live your life that way, whether it's baseball or life or business or whatever, you're going to be successful in it.
That's great. Boy, I love that. Don't give them a reason to cross off the list, because that's what that's what they're doing, right? There's a ton of kids out there, and they're just trying to get through the list, and that's great. Dad, we're going to let you wrap it up. I believe that I think maybe I'm mistaken, but I think that you are one that talked about the 5 things that are the most important and the things that the coaches are really looking for. So I'd like for you kind of to wrap this whole thing up with those 5 things that players and parents need. As much as we talk baseball, there's so many more things that are important in this whole game of life and this process that these kids are going through. So why don't you wrap it up with that?
Will do. You're right. There's so much more to it, and baseball becomes that vehicle for ultimate success. If baseball gets you a degree, that's really, really good. That's okay. I mean, these 2 guys are living proof. It's okay. First and foremost, again, 7% of kids play college baseball out of high school. I'm not sure what that percentage is that play Division I. Not, it's very slim. And don't evaluate by division. There's good baseball everywhere.
Yep.
I mean, people can play. Evaluate the program, evaluate the people, evaluate the coach. First and foremost is an academic fit. Have something that, look, and most males don't, they're 17. And I want to play baseball. I'm going to play for the Yankees or Phillies or Pirates or Cardinals, whatever. That's what they think. And that's okay. We never take their dream away, ever. But, it may not be realistic, and we need a little backup plan. So what if you're interested? Some kids are specific, want to be an engineer, want to, be a teacher, or what? I want to be an accountant. That's fine. Then let's start with that. If you don't, no big deal. Next is a social fit. So DeSales and Clarion are 2 different animals. Clarion's a really cool town, college town by any definition you want. And we're, kind of nestled in between Allentown and Bethlehem, and not far from Philly and New York. So you go socially, what is it like? What size school, size of the classrooms, food, anything that has to do, it doesn't have to do with baseball. Any of that stuff. Teachers, team. That's why you go to a prospect camp, to be around the players, be around the coaches. They're going to get a good feel. That's 2. 3, financial fit. Hey, I have my major. I like the school. Can we afford it? And, that's another topic for another hour sometime. A lot of opportunities financial aid wise, but you got to know how to skin it and go down that road. So maybe you can't afford it, and you have a list. You go back to the top. Got my major, hate the school. All right, that's gone. As Nolan says, we eliminate them. We eliminate them. Go back to the top. Hey, got my major, like the school. Family can afford it. All right. Next, an athletic fit. How do I know they want me? Sent a guy 6 emails, sent Doc 6 emails, didn't hear back from him. He's not that way. But, I haven't heard back from him. Well, probably should have started after the second one. At least, maybe 2, then shut it down, go to the next one. That's okay. Make sure we talk about, the kids at high school programs that maybe not getting attention. Social media is great. Make sure whenever the video is posted on Baseball Blue Book or Twitter, whatever, make sure it's like an appetizer. Not too long. A minute or 2. It's like, I got to go check that out. It's not going to be an end all, but it certainly can end. It certainly can end if it's not very appetizing. It's not enticing.
Right.
It's amazing how many of those go out. It's like, what are we doing? Somebody actually said that's okay to put up. Make sure it's an appetizer. Has to be. And then the coach will follow up from there, do the due diligence and check with high school and whatever. And last is my favorite, is the emotional fit. My son, Johnny, played shortstop and batted third since he's in 10th grade in high school. That's great. So did everybody else in college. They all did. They all did. So, and it's, and you and I talked before, it's the travel mentality a little bit, breeds a little selfishness, and, the team concept sometimes gets lost. So it's that emotional fit. And, Johnny knows, like, there's a man at shortstop, there's a 22-year-old at shortstop, and Johnny's 17 or 18-year-olds, and, he ain't near his man body yet. Physically, emotionally, mentally, none of those things has clicked yet, but he knows. But after the game, we have this nice little establishment right down the street from DeSales, Copperhead Grill. You're going to go to the Copperhead Grill, and they're going to say, "Yeah, Johnny used to be playing." And Johnny's going to nod in agreement because you're mom and dad. He's going to yield. But and Neiman doesn't know what he's doing, right? None of the Neimans, they don't know what. Johnny's going to yield. But deep down, Johnny knows that there's a man in front of him. And when his opportunity comes, so the emotional part of it, usually not the player, unless he's really brainwashed. It comes to the parents. Hey, I'm used to seeing my kid bat third and play shortstop for the last 3 years. I'm watching him.
Yep.
You're watching him now, he's waiting his turn, basically. And how are you going to handle it, mom and dad? So I can say these things. I'm 64, so I don't have much filter. Doc probably shouldn't say this stuff, but it's true. It's so true. And, hey, there's schools for you. If you want your son to bat third and play shortstop, there's schools for you, but hey, how did Johnny do, on Monday morning at the water cooler? Well, Johnny was 3 for 4. That's great. How'd the team do? We got beat 14-4. Okay, well, if you like that and everybody's happy, so be it. Johnny might not be happy, but you're happy but that's that answer. They answer personally, selfishly, before the team. Both these guys would say, if I wasn't at a game or something, obviously it corresponded. How'd the game go? Well, I would get the score from them first, but the team, and I have to pull out of them how they did. Those are the kind of kids. There's a lot of kids. There's a lot of athletes playing baseball, but there's not a lot of baseball players. So when you're looking for people, for me, I think athleticism is key, and I know that. Small percentage of kids that are really baseball kids, the highest compliment you could get. Man, that kid's a baseball kid. But there's a lot of athletes playing. We have them too. I think it's the highest compliment you can give. And so we'll look for kids that can do some things that we can hopefully turn them into baseball players, and usually you get a chance to be successful, or their best days are ahead of them. That's the key part from our standpoint. But all those other things it's just a blueprint, if you will, and a blueprint for the blue book, if you will, to go through, and there's my guidelines to go through the college process. Hey, if you're a Division I kid and you're going to be a first 5 rounder, you don't need any of that. Maybe first 10 round. You don't need any of it. But the vast majority do, and the worst thing that can happen, transfer portal, I don't know, Doc, how many are in now? 3,000?
Close to 3,000.
I think it's down a little bit now.
Down a little bit now, till the season's over. Worst thing you want to do is go through it again. I'm going to portal and go through it again. Why? Because the selfishness bred that, and you didn't do the homework the first time. Now, don't get me wrong, there's legitimate reasons to go in a portal. There's certainly, I'm not saying they're not, but I bet you the vast majority of them have the other reasons. So
Yep.
Academic fit, social fit, financial fit, athletic fit, emotional fit, in that order. Then you take a lot of the anxiety away from the recruiting process.
That's good. That's great. The Neiman family, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. A lot of great advice here. Legacy is really kind of what we're talking about, and excited to see this family and what's in store. Nolan, how old are your kids?
They are 3, 6, and 9.
3, 6, and 9. So we got a few years for them. And Doc, we're all waiting. So I'd like to get an announcement when it happens. So
Been waiting for a while.
He's got a dog.
He's got a dog. That works. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and we